Good morning, everybody, or good evening, good afternoon. Um, so we're just going to wait for a couple more minutes so a few more people can join us, and then we're going to start. Just want to make sure it's true. Okay. Can you see my slides? Okay. Perfect. All right. Hey, everyone. My name is Aman Bishi, and I'm an Education USA advisor at. Oh, sorry. Let's get back. Education USA advisor at the Lahore office. Thank you for joining us in today's session called the Postgraduate Opportunities for Medical Students in Pakistan. I'm going to give you guys a brief introduction about Education USA and USCFP and the services that we have to offer. And then I'm going to let Megan from Creighton University take over. All right, so we have centers. What is USCFP? The United States Education Foundation in Pakistan. We have centers in all three cities, major cities, Lahore, Karachi, and Islamabad. If you have any friends, family, relatives who want to study in the US or go to the US for educational purposes, you can let them know about our services, about Education USA. We also have the Prometric Testing Center. If you want to take the USMLE, the GRE, the GMAT, any Microsoft certifications, we have over 200 plus certifications and exams that we conduct at the Prometric Testing Center. You can check that out on our website as well. And then we have the Fulbright Scholarship, which is our flagship scholarship, where we have different exchange programs for master's and PhD students. If you'd like to know more about that, you can visit our website at www.uscfp.org. What is Education USA? Since I am an Education USA advisor, we are a part of the US State Department, and our job is to provide all our students who come to us for guidance to give them accurate, current, and comprehensive information. And as an advisor, it is our job to let the student know what a best fit university for them might be. For example, what does a best fit university mean? It means that perhaps you have certain monetary constraints, or you would like a certain region where you want to go to a specific university. For example, you have family nearby. So I, as an advisor, or my colleagues will assist you in finding a university which is your best fit. Right, so these are some of the services that we have to offer. All our services at USCFP Education USA are free of cost. We have a library. We do mock exams. We do one-on-one sessions with our advisees, where we figure out what your best fit university is going to be. Today's session is also a free session. Due to COVID, everything is online right now. But if we, whenever we open up, you will be able to access a lot of our facilities in-house. And we conduct various workshops on TOEFL, GRE, SAT. Right, so without any further ado, Megan, over to you.
Thanks. Hi, everybody. Let me share my screen here. So we're going to talk a little bit today about what options there are for studying healthcare in the US. And I'm going to go through some of the most common pathways, what they look like in the US, and what it means for you. I'm sure many of you, might be studying your MBBS. You might be in high school looking at this. session on Facebook. So I want to make sure that you understand what those pathways look like, because in the US, it's a very, very different process. For example, MBBS does not exist in the US. So let's dive in. So sometimes I hear from students and they say, oh, well, I went to Google and I typed in studying healthcare in the US. And I will tell you, you're going to get stuck in one of those Google holes where you think it's been 5 minutes, but it's really been 2 hours. And these might be some of the terms that you would see pop up. It's because healthcare in the US and studying healthcare in the US is very complicated. There's lots of different levels to it, lots of different licensures, lots of different names for similar programs. So let's take a look at some of these. So let's start with some of those traditional pathways. So this is going to be programs such as medicine, dentistry, and pharmacy. In the US, these are actually going to be a two-part process where you'll actually do your pre-healthcare program for your bachelor's degree. So remember, as I said, we don't have an MBBS. So what you would do if you're thinking about medicine in the US is you would actually study pre-medicine first. Before you go to medical school. So the same would be for dentistry or pharmacy, where you would do pre-dentistry or pre-pharmacy, and then you would go on to that professional school. To enter into those professional schools, there's another entrance exam, such as the MCAT for medicine, the DAT for dentistry, and the PCAT for pharmacy. The total process for some of these programs is going to be 6 to 8 years. So they're pretty long in the US. And that's because you'll do your 4-year undergraduate degree first, and then move on to these professional programs. So one question I'm often asked is, well, what does this pre-healthcare track include? Why do you have to take it? So it's going to include the prerequisite courses that you're required to take to be able to apply to these programs. So for example, for most programs, it's going to be usually 2 to 3 years of biology with labs, same for chemistry with labs, certain level of maths, social sciences such as sociology and psychology, and usually English composition, and sometimes a couple other courses. And then what's really going to help you stand out in the application process for these traditional programs is going to be those extracurricular activities. So, you probably hear from your teachers or advisors or maybe Education USA that you need to be involved in those ECs. This is why, and we'll talk a little bit more about these specifically later on. So another question that I'm often asked is, well, what if you are in an MBBS program right now? What happened? What options do you have if you want to stay in medicine? So there's a couple options, but I will tell you, you're going to be a little bit limited. And that's because medical school in the US in general is incredibly competitive for all students to get into. There's only a handful of universities that accept international students, so that makes it even harder for you. And then most of those programs require that you do your bachelor's degree in the US to even be eligible to apply. So if you're doing your MBBS, like I said, it's going to be incredibly challenging, but that doesn't mean that it's impossible. There are some options for you. So the first is you can come to the US and do a related master's or PhD opportunity, such as programs, in research, like medical microbiology, things like that, public health. Think about going into the education sector and becoming a professor in an MBBS program, things like that. You could also, do a master's program or a PhD program if that's really what you want to do, and then look at going into the MD program in the US, which would be the process to become a doctor. The other option that you have, if you don't want to go the master's or PhD route, is it going through the US MLE, which Aman just said you could actually do the licensing exams at their center. So another reason to stay connected to Education USA. So how this would work is that usually in a medical program in the US, well, not usually, in any medical program in the US, you are going to take these exams as part of your licensure. They're called the STEP exams. So you are able to actually take these exams right now in Pakistan. Once you complete all 3 of them, then you can apply for your residency in the US. So they are, as I said, they're a series of 3 exams. You take them over several months. So it's not like you can take them all in one weekend and be done with it. It does take, a period of time. Overall, to take these exams, it does cost over 2,000 US dollars. So you do have to know that it can be a little bit expensive. But then if you pass all three of those exams, you'd be able to apply for your residency in the US, which is the on-the-job training portion of getting your medical degree in the US. So your residency can be 3 to 8 years, sometimes depending on the field that you are going into. So for example, if you are thinking of studying or wanting to be like a general family practitioner or an emergency room physician, that may only be, 3 or 4 years. Whereas if you're thinking you want to be a surgeon, that's going to be closer to 8 years. And then depending on what you still want to do, you might have to do your fellowship on top of that. So for example, if you want to be a neurosurgeon, it might be that 8-year residency plus then another 3 or 4 year fellowship. So it's a long process to even get your MD or your medical degree. One other thing to recognize is that residency is highly competitive for all students. So even right now in the US, this last year when students graduated from medical school, there were more students who graduated from medical school than residency spots that exist in the US. And looking at the data over the next couple of years, it looks like it's going to be becoming more and more competitive for those residency spots. So if you don't get a residency spot, that's when you have to think about, well, maybe I do need to find a job in research or that master's degree in research or something like that, to get your foot in the door. So you do have to think, there you might have to be flexible in some of these options. Some other pathways that exist that sometimes students don't think about, but are kind of similar jobs, right? You're still working in patient care, you're working directly with patients, but could be a little bit of an easier process. It's going to be programs like physical therapy, occupational therapy, physician's assistant, and rehabilitation sciences. So if you're going to do the whole program in the US, it's similar to those traditional programs where you're going to do your bachelor's degree first, and then you would go into the professional school. One of the great things about these programs, though, is that there's not the same residency requirement. So you could do, your bachelor's degree right now in Pakistan or your MBBS, then think about going into physical therapy or occupational therapy. A couple challenges do exist with these fields, though. So some of these are newer fields that don't exist robustly outside of the US. So for example, physician's assistant is one of those. It is a growing program in the US. It has been for about 10 years, 10 to 15 years. But physician's assistant isn't something that really translates outside of the US. So if your goal is to return right back to Pakistan, that might not be the best option for you. The degree level that you might need to practice can also be different from country to country. So a good example of this is physical therapy. So in the US, to be a physical therapist, it's a full doctoral level program. But in other countries, you only have to do the master's level program, which is usually the rehabilitation sciences. So you do have to think long term, where do you want to be and what program might match up with those goals. And then some of these programs do not accept international students yet. And that's because for many of these programs, when they're starting and they're in their licensure process, they do have to exist usually for 5 years before they're allowed to accept international students. So many of these programs universities are still adding them. So if you were to look today to see which programs accept international students, it'll be a much smaller list than if you were to look at a year from now and see, what options might exist for you. But one of the things that I said at the beginning is this field of healthcare in the US is so massive and there's so many different options, which is great, but it can also be overwhelming. Some other popular programs that we're seeing a lot of international students go into, especially on the graduate level, include programs like nursing. So for example, there's many different ways in the US that you can become a nurse. Even if you've completed your bachelor's degree or you are in the process of completing your bachelor's degree in Pakistan, there's a lot of one-year accelerated nursing programs in the US where you could come get your bachelor's in nursing in just 1 year. pass the nursing licensure exam, and then be a nurse in the US. And it's one of the most in-demand fields right now, with a lot of nurses making, on average 75,000 US dollars per year right out of their nursing program. That's a lot of money, guys. So if you are really interested in more of the hands-on healthcare, patient care side of it, that could be a great option for you. But we're also seeing a lot of students going into some of those allied health opportunities, such as nutrition, exercise science, health coaching, uh, some of those programs where we're really helping people live kind of like their best life right now and figure out what changes do they need to make to their lifestyle to be a healthier person. If you like more of the behind the scenes type of things, genetic counseling, biomedical engineering, chemical engineering, 3D printing, these are all also highly in demand and great places for you to go as you're looking at master's and PhD programs. So the great thing is even if you are completing a bachelor's in engineering right now, or your MBBS, or, a slew of other programs right now in Pakistan, there's still so many opportunities for you outside of just being a doctor that exist in the US. One of my favorite areas that doesn't get talked about a lot in healthcare is really the intersection of healthcare and business. I think a lot of people forget that uh, that at the end of the day, that a hospital or healthcare system is a business, right? They have to earn enough money to keep the lights on and pay their doctors and nurses and staff. And so they need people who specialize in this. So one of the programs that we've seen really grow in the last 10 or 15 years is healthcare leadership or health administration, sometimes also called healthcare administration, um, where you can really come from any type of background. So we see students, who've completed their bachelor's of science or even a bachelor's of engineering or their MBBS and come and get a master's degree in this. And sometimes it could be a combined MBA with healthcare leadership or concentration in healthcare leadership, or just a straight healthcare administration program, and work in the field in these really cool positions where you are helping to run a hospital or healthcare system. The reason why this program is so important is because in the past, hospitals and healthcare systems were run by doctors who were either ready to retire or didn't want to do patient care anymore. But like I said, at the end of the day, a hospital is still a business and has to run, correct? So just because they may have been a great doctor doesn't mean that they know or understand finances or accounting or the larger scale of patient care. So uh, these people, specialize in understanding how to maximize patient care, how to support the doctors, nurses, and staff, how to handle insurance companies, to dealing with government mandates, to being able to quickly adjust when a pandemic comes. So it's a really, really cool field if you're fascinated by the healthcare field in general, but maybe don't necessarily want to do patient care. Health information systems and healthcare data analysts. I don't think it's any secret that data and IT is important in any field, right? We know that this is growing. Healthcare is no different. In fact, in the US, because we don't have a centralized system, it's incredibly important because every hospital network has its own system. It has a lot of security and data concerns. So that's another field that's highly, highly in demand. And then programs such as medical or pharmaceutical sales and healthcare marketing and bioscience entrepreneurship. These are great programs for students who maybe you did an undergraduate degree, in sciences like biology or chemistry, or even your MBBS. And you really want to work in a hospital setting, but you don't necessarily want to be responsible for patients. This could be a great field for you because it really helps to bridge those companies that help to develop new medications, new surgical instruments, new technology in healthcare. And your role is to understand and learn everything about that thing, and then go to the hospital and train the doctors and nurses. I have a friend who actually does this job. She works for the company that invented the first robot used for surgery. Her job is to sit in surgeries with the surgeons and help teach them how to use this robot, which is crazy. It's such a cool job and such a great way, like I said, to kind of be that bridge. So I touched on this a little bit already, but one question I'm often asked is if you're in your bachelor's degree right now, what things should you be doing to make sure that you are a great candidate for some of these graduate and professional programs? So of course, as you know, you have to be a class topper. You're going to have those awesome grades, but that's also not going to be quite enough. And this is where those extracurricular activities are very important. They're going to want to see that you're involved in research, which could either be your own research or on a faculty member's research. They're going to want to see job shadowing, internships, volunteering, because these are the types of things that show that you are passionate about the field and you have a dedication to the field. And then, of course, you're going to need to be doing that test prep. It could be the STEP exams, the PCAT, the DAT, the GRE, the GMAT. Any program is going to want one of these exams. So make sure that you are looking ahead at what programs you're interested in applying to and preparing, to do well on those exams. So now I'm going to tell you a little bit about my university and why I talk a little bit about, or why I talk so much about healthcare. So Creighton University is located in Omaha, Nebraska. So we are right in the middle of the US. We are a mid-sized university of about 9,000 students, and our students come from all 50 states in the US and about 50 countries. We do have other students from Pakistan on our campus. We are a top-ranked university overall. Nationally, we are ranked number 103. And then some of our professional programs that I'll talk about are ranked in the top, 5 or 10 in the country as well, which is pretty awesome. Total, we have about 150 undergraduate programs with another over 60 graduate and professional programs. But what makes us special is that we were actually started as a science and medical university about 150 years ago. So healthcare is one of the things that we are best known for. We're one of the first universities to have the full doctoral program in physical therapy. We are also the only university in the US with 2 fully functioning and fully open medical schools. We have one at our home campus in Omaha. We have a second medical school in Phoenix, Arizona. We have our own hospital right on campus in Omaha, which is pretty great. So lots and lots of options on our campus. So as you can see here, as I mentioned, on the undergraduate level, most of our science students study in the College of Arts and Sciences, although we do have some students who will study in our College of Business and go on to a program in healthcare. And then we have a very competitive College of Nursing where we do have the traditional 4-year nursing program, as well as that 1-year accelerated program that I mentioned. As well as other master's and doctoral level nursing programs. Then we also have programs in dentistry, law, medicine, occupational therapy, pharmacy, physical therapy, physician's assistant, plus over 50 other graduate programs, many of them either in like the science research side, such as pharmacology, pharmaceutical sciences, medical microbiology, things like that, as well as a lot of programs in business. So on the undergraduate level, our students tend to do very, very well, with over 99% of our students either employed or in graduate school within 6 months of graduation. And it can be said to be very similar on the graduate level, depending on what program you're going into. Our students do very, very well, either finding a job or moving on to the next level. And that's because of the layers of support that we have for our students. So not only are you going to have your academic advisor, but within your college as well, you're going to have other advisors who are going to make sure that you are on track with your classes, doing all of those extracurricular activities, so that way you are prepared to go after your dream job when you graduate. So one question I'm always asked, well, the first question always is, where is Omaha? We are right in the middle of the US. But the next question always, why Omaha? Why, what is this city? Tell me more. So Omaha is actually a bigger city than most people think. So we are about 1 million people. But some cool facts about Omaha is that we are the top city in the world for Fortune 500 companies. So if you think of the 500 largest companies in the world, over 100 of them have offices or headquarters in Omaha, which is pretty great for our students. It does make us the #1 city for paid internships, the #1 city for college grads, the #2 city for millennials to get hired. The coolest thing about those statistics, though, is that because there's so many people in their 20s and 30s who are moving here for, either graduate or professional school or for work, it means that the city has a very young feeling, and all of the festivals and concerts and everything that happens here is really geared towards people who are in their 20s and 30s, which makes it a lot of fun. But my favorite statistic, honestly, is that we are the #2 foodie city in the US. So if you love food, really from anywhere in the world, this is a great place to be. We have enough restaurants here that you can go to breakfast, lunch, and dinner every day for a year and never go to the same restaurant twice, which is so crazy. So these are undergraduate application materials, and I'll tell you the biggest difference between the undergraduate application and the graduate application is that there is going to be an application fee on the graduate application. They will want to see all of your undergraduate transcripts, 1 to 2 letters of recommendation, and then, as I said, most of our programs are going to require one of those tests. So either the GRE, GMAT, or one of those specific exams for the professional programs. And then if you want to know specifically for a professional program that you're looking at or graduate program, this is my email address and WhatsApp number. You can always shoot me an email and I'd be happy to put you in contact with that program director so you can learn more and learn about admissions into that program. I will say for whatever university you are looking at to potentially be doing a graduate or PhD program or professional program, you should definitely make sure that you're reaching out to the program directors because usually those are the people who are making the admissions decisions. So set up time to send not just a professional email to them about your background and your interests in their programs, but think about setting up a Zoom session with them as well. So that way, when they do review your application, they already know a little bit about you and your interest in the field. So I do see a couple of questions that have come in, and we do have time now for some Q&A. So how to do physical therapy in the US after your MBBS? So start looking at programs for the DPT, which is the doctoral physical therapy programs in the US. As I mentioned, we have one. And do your research to figure out, all of those things that are important to you in terms of fit, such as where do you want to be in the US? What is your price range? A lot of these programs, professional programs, are very expensive, and they usually have no scholarships with them. So you have to know what your budget's going to be. Do you want to be, in a metropolitan area or not as much of a metropolitan area? But this is also where I highly, highly recommend setting up a time to meet with somebody like Aman at Education USA so they could look through, your list of what's important to you for fit and help you kind of narrow that down and help you be very realistic about these things. Can we find internships in the US? Since you mentioned internships can make your profile more attractive. This is a great question. So one of the challenges with this is, of course, the visa process. So the only way really to be able to come to the US for an internship is if you're coming on a student visa and you're here studying, and then you can do your internship at the same time. There's really no way otherwise to do an internship without being here studying. I have heard of students who might come here on a tourist degree or a tourist visa, excuse me, and maybe do a little bit of job shadowing where maybe you have an uncle or a cousin who works in this field. So you go to work with him one day just to see what he does. Things like that are okay, but you can't do any sort of internship or studying without being on a student visa. So how hard is it acing the USMLE? It is hard. It's not going to be an easy process. However, I tell students, if healthcare is what you're passionate about and being a doctor is what you're passionate about, and if you're doing very, very well in your MBBS, you should be okay. You are going to have to take time to study outside of it. I highly, highly recommend buying some of those study guides, either online or the physical books, to make sure you know what kind of questions are going to be asked. And really, really prepare and finding some of those mock exams. What are the entry requirements for accelerated nursing? So what they're going to be looking for an accelerated nursing program is that you did well in some courses, such as your undergraduate, like biology and chemistry courses, things like that. Every program is going to be a little bit different in what they look for, though. But they're going to want to see that you have a strong background in the sciences. Do we need prior work experience for graduate healthcare management programs? It's going to depend on the university. Some universities, especially because of the pandemic, will not require any sort of work experience because they know that you might be coming right from your undergraduate degree into your master's degree. And especially in the last 2 years, getting any sort of work experience has not really been possible. Sometimes, so I have heard of schools who are waiving that requirement right now. But some might require some work experience or at least some internships or research or job shadowing in that field to be eligible. Can we go into a nursing program without a bachelor's degree, like right after A levels? Absolutely. So we do have a lot of students who will come to us after completing their A levels, or if you're doing like the Pakistan National Curriculum, or if you're doing IB, you could enter as your bachelor's degree. There's a couple different types of nursing programs you'll find in the US. Both will be 4 years, but one is called a direct entry. That's the type of program that we have on my campus, where you would start in your nursing classes right away. Some programs you'll see are going to be called pre-nursing programs, where you'll actually take some foundational courses in your first year or two and then move directly into the nursing program. But either way, you'll graduate with your bachelor's of nursing in 4 years. And like I said, that's the most common pathway to become a nurse. Ooh, so what pathway is better? I think this might be one of the toughest questions. Oh, here we go. Master's in public health first and then residency, or residency and then master's in public health. So you don't need to do a residency for your master's in public health. So if you are thinking of to get into that residency, you're going to have to do that USMLE. So, I mean, that's kind of tough. So I would say maybe doing your master's in public health and studying for the USMLE, and then trying to join a residency. But I guess you could do it the other way. You could do your residency and then do a master's in public health if you want to move more into that field. I guess at the end of the day, the bigger question is, what are your career goals and what do you ideally want to be doing long term? If it's really to work in public health, then you don't even have to do a residency. You could go from your undergraduate degree into your master's in public health and work strictly in a public health field. How do you connect with scholarship programs that facilitate you doing your rotations for the USMLE? So this is one of the challenges with healthcare programs, is there's not a lot of scholarship programs. And when I say not a lot, I really mean almost none. Studying healthcare is a very expensive process in the US. And even for US citizens, there's not a lot of scholarship opportunities. What are opportunities after your master's in public health? Oh my gosh, I feel like I see so many students doing a lot of things. So you could work in the data side of public health. In every city in the US, there's an office for public health where maybe you do advocacy work. Or like right now, their big thing, of course, is making sure that there's enough vaccine clinics set up, testing clinics set up, things like that. You could work specifically in a certain healthcare issue and work with the government, either the national or state government in that issue. I know doctors who have gone into public health, so it goes back to that question of, should you do your residency and then public health? It just depends. I think public health is such a cool field because it's so big, and you could really find your like niche, area that you really want to be in. Can we get a list of universities that allow international students into medical programs in the US? How hard is it knowing that you're an international student? What percentage for medical programs? Okay, so for students who have completed their undergraduate degree in the US and are looking at medical schools in the US, it's somewhere between 17 and 20 medical schools total that will accept international students. For students who've completed their undergraduate degree outside of the US and are looking to do their full medical program in the US, there's only one medical school I know of who will accept undergraduate degree outside of the US. Traditionally, or I guess I should say, like over the past 5 years, on average, it's about 1% to 2% of international students who are accepted into medical programs. And that really includes the undergraduate students from who completed their undergraduate program in the US. So when I say it's really tough, I mean it's really tough. The biggest reason for this for a lot of medical programs is because it's very, very competitive, as I mentioned, to get into medical school. So one of the ways that they limit their applications is by saying that they only want US citizens applying. Another reason is because medical school in the US is very, very expensive. And as I mentioned, there's generally no scholarships. So a lot of these programs can range anywhere from 75,000 US dollars to 100,000 US dollars per year. That's just for the tuition and fees. That doesn't include your living expenses. So because it's so expensive, they know that not a lot of international students have that kind of money for 4 years to be able to afford it. So that's how one way that they limit their applications. So I've done my MS in statistics. Please guide me about medical data science PhD. So I think you're set up very, very well to find it, to look at one of these programs. I think the cool thing about PhD programs is that you might be able to find something specific in like biodata or medical data science, or even just looking at PhD programs in data science or statistics, but choosing to focus specifically on the medical sciences and medical research within your dissertation. So what I would do is I would start looking at universities that have, one of those types of programs, and then start looking at what their faculty are doing research in. Most universities are going to be very, very good at listing on their website what kind of research their faculty are doing. So start looking at that and start reaching out to those faculty members. Faculty usually love talking to people about their research. So, send them that professional email, introduce yourself and your interest in the field, and see if they're interested in setting up a Zoom call with you so you can learn more. Does Fulbright program include public health or MBA in healthcare management? That's a great question for Education USA, because I know every year the Fulbright program has different programs that they're looking at sending students to the US for. But Education USA is the one who facilitates all of those. So they're going to be the best person to answer your question. Does your university assist in finding a job post-degree, either like in nursing or health administration? So yes, so every university in the US is going to have a career services office, and their job is to help prepare you to find a job. So they can help set you up with internships or job shadowing. They will help you put together your resume in the US style, as well as your cover letter. They'll help you do practice interviews. They also host usually 1 to 2 career fairs a year where they bring in hundreds of employers, where you can practice networking or set up, interviews or job shadowing, things like that, or do an interview for an internship. So I always tell students, do not wait until you're ready for an internship to connect with the Career Center. You really should be working with them your very first semester on campus to help build some of those skills. Can you switch to clinical practice once you've done your master's, or is the USMLE compulsory in the US? So it depends on what kind of clinical practice you want to do. If you strictly want to be a doctor, you're going to have to go the USMLE route. But if you're thinking about one of those other programs, it just kind of depends on what your career goals are and which field you specifically want to practice in. Guys, these have been amazing questions. I love it when you guys are super engaged and have such awesome questions. I think we have a few more minutes for a couple more if you want to pop them in the Q&A or in the chat box.
So just to answer, so I'm just gonna see his name. Yeah, Khazir Rehan's question about the Fulbright program. So we do master's and PhD programs, Fulbright flagship scholarship. So if that's something that you're interested in, you can also contact us on info@usefp.org with any questions that you might have. But we do, so essentially, Fulbright it doesn't matter which program that you want to go for, as long as the master's or PhD program. If you want to go into healthcare management, that's perfectly fine. If you just submit your application on our web portal, we have to look at it. Yeah. Back to you, Megan.
I mean, I think that's an awesome question. I think the Fulbright opportunity is such a great option for students.
Yeah.
And since you guys are in a country where it's a strong option, this is, like I said, one of the many reasons to stay up to date with Education USA, especially on social media, because they always post on Facebook when the applications are open or when they're doing information sessions on Fulbright.
And we
So
have the largest Fulbright program in the world. So I think everybody in Pakistan is actually very blessed to be a part of this program if they apply for it.
yeah. So a couple other questions have come in. So I passed my exam in 2015. Can I apply for admission? So some programs might say that you have a 2-year limit on when you've passed the exam. So it's going to be really up to each program, and I would contact programs you're interested in directly. Is the IELTS compulsory? Or are there some exemptions? So I'm going to say generally, yes, an English language exam is going to be compulsory. One of the exemptions, though, that I've seen at universities, especially if it's a program that requires the GRE or the GMAT, is that if you hit a certain score in the verbal section, then they'll waive your like TOEFL or IELTS. But I always recommend students to just plan on taking it because every university is going to have a different requirement. And it's better to just have it and be done with it than, be in the application process, find out you need it, and not be able to get a seat for another month. I would also look at taking the Duolingo English test. A lot of universities are accepting this right now. And it's nice because you can take it at home and you don't have to find a seat in a testing center. Is there a separate place where you guys specifically guide regarding the USMLE? So I would put this back to Education USA, since they do the USMLE exams at their center, which is so awesome for you guys. They can specifically guide you on what those dates look like, the timeline, the fees, things like that. And then, is there any age limit for the USMLE? I don't think so. I mean, I've heard of people going into medical programs, in their 40s and 50s. So I don't think that there's any age limit. I think it's mostly going to be, are you prepared to pass those exams? Because as I mentioned, they're pretty expensive. So you want to make sure when you go to take them that you're really prepared to pass them. Great questions.
If you want any further information on the USMLE, you can contact me, I guess, on aman@usefp.org. I'm also going to type it in the chat box here. aman@usefp.org. I'd be happy to answer any questions if anybody has. Yep.
Awesome. Well, I guess we'll hold on for another minute to see if any other questions come in. If not, it was such a pleasure hanging out with you all this evening. If you're either in the Zoom or if you're on Facebook Live, either way. I really, really miss traveling to Pakistan. I've been many times. It was actually the last place I was before the pandemic started. And so I know I miss seeing you guys in person. I cannot wait to get back there.
Yeah, it's been a while since I've seen you.
Yeah, February 2020.
Yeah, it's been so almost 2 years.
Yeah.
I guess, are we?
I think we got one more question. So what kind of volunteer work would I recommend? That's a tough question. It kind of depends on what you enjoy doing. It doesn't necessarily have to be like in a hospital, but I would say as long as it's a person-centered type of volunteer work, uh, where, maybe you're volunteering in a school or in a clinic or in a nursing facility, something like that. But I would say as long as it's also something that you're passionate about, because like I said, at the end of the day, what they really want to see is that whatever you're doing in terms of uh, any sort of volunteer or research is that it's really something that you're passionate about. And in those interviews for graduate and professional programs, you can really talk about why you were passionate about it.
All right, I guess you want to wrap it up?
Yeah.
I think you have a good amount of questions.
Yeah.
Lots of questions. Very good questions also, I must say.
Excellent questions.
Hi guys, thank you again for being here with us live. Thank you, Megan, for giving us your time. And a brilliant presentation, by the way, might I add.
Thank you.
Again, if you guys have any questions, you can either email Megan directly. Her email was earlier on the screen, or you can email me at aman@uscfp.org. If you have to answer any questions that you guys might have, whether it's medical related or not, whether it's for the Fulbright or if you want to study individually for bachelor's, master's, or PhD, we'd be more than happy to help you guys out or a family member. Thank you, Megan, again, and take care. Good night,
Thank
everybody.
you. Good night, everybody.
Bye-bye.